All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Dave, me, and Nick here. We'll be doing our 2022 preview and prediction for the Texas A&M Aggies. Looking at the head coaching staff, Jimbo Fisher and Daryl Dickey are back for their fifth season together. Daryl Dickey's been a phenomenal play caller for them. Previous stint in Memphis was very successful as well. Jimbo Fisher's yet to win 10 games in a season. They would have in 2020, but of course they only played 10 games, 34-14 record overall. DJ Durkin, he replaces Mike Elko, who heads to Duke to be the head coach there, replacing David Cutcliffe. This will be his first year, but he is familiar with the conference. He's coming over from Ole Miss, familiar SEC West opponent that beat Texas A&M last year. It's been a wild offseason for the Aggies, the top-ranked recruiting class here in the cycle of 2022. 30 commits overall, 8 5-stars, 5 of the top 10 defensive line recruits. So regardless of the controversy that surrounds how they got those recruits there here in Aggie land. Kicking things off with quarterback. It's kind of a three-way battle for quarterback, but not really. Haynes King got hurt early on the year, second game of the season. Only saw limited action last year. Had the 3 interceptions in his lone start against Kent State. He's a dual-threat guy, though. He can make plays with his legs. They landed a top 5-star recruit, though, in Connor Wigman. But I think that Max Johnson, the LSU transfer, is honestly going to be the runaway favorite for this job.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it, Hayes King, like you said, had that injury. Before the injury, there were a lot of people were very high on him in College Station. I like the pickup of Connor Wigman. I think he's a very strong 5-star recruit out of high school. But you look at Max Johnson, who had a decent year at times with the LSU Tigers. He transferred into the program, 27 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 2,815 yards. So I think Max Johnson has to be the favorite at this point for this Texas A&M team. He brings some experience to the program. Played some time, like I said, at LSU. He's a sophomore transfer. But it could go either way with these 3 players, depending on who plays the best in spring practice. It really is a toss-up, which is very interesting. You don't see a lot of quarterback rooms in college have these sort of 3-way toss-up this late into the spring. And I think this is a real opportunity for someone to kind of step up and be the guy in practice. A couple sites have Hayes King as the favorite. I agree with you. I think Max Johnson has to be the favorite for me at this time, just due to that experience last year at LSU and looked good at times for the Tigers. But this is a really interesting quarterback room, and it can go either way.
I don't think that Wigman's going to play much this year as a 5-star true freshman coming in. They don't need him to really play that much. I think they got 2 solid options here. But Johnson, I like him to be the starter. He tends to make some poor decisions, but he's kind of a gamer. He's very decisive with his reads as a passer. As a runner. I don't know how many running yards he had. I don't think he had many at all. He might have even been in the negative, but he makes plays with his legs. He's also decisive in that category. One of the poor plays he made that really stood out against UCLA in week 1, he's under pressure and he just launches the ball behind his back. That's not great. Of course, that was early in the season. He's definitely worked on that. Only 6 interceptions. The decision-making did not plague him throughout the year. I think he's got a really nice deep ball, though. I think the accuracy as well with pressure in his face. Jimbo Fisher is a very nice player to work with in Max Johnson. I like some of the qualities he has. I think this could potentially be a big year for him. He's got a nice little supporting cast to work with. There's times where he holds the ball too much, but there's just some negatives in his game that I think Jimbo Fisher will work out. I think Johnson will be the starter here, and I think he'll have a pretty successful season.
Yeah, Max Johnson had a rushing touchdown for LSU last year. He did end up with a negative rushing yards, but he did have that encounter. That does include some of the sacks he took. He had a decent year on the ground in 2020, picking up 120 yards on 54 attempts. So I think Jimbo Fisher can really work with this quarterback here and kind of develop him and sort of put him into the offense what he wants to play here. I think Max Johnson will be a solid pick up in the portal, and I really think this could be a good start for him and a kind of restart at College Station.
Moving to probably my favorite positional group on this offense, the running back group and the offensive line. ESPN's Quint Kisnick joined the podcast back in 2020, late in the year before the Orange Bowl, and we were talking about A&M, and I pointed out they didn't have, because we were talking about if they deserve to make the playoffs or not, and I was like, their winning margin is not very great. And he made a great point that, they're not built to win by 40-plus points. This is a team that likes to ground and pound. They like to grind down opponents, escape with, 2 or 3 possession victories, 21 points or less, nothing too major. And that's a great point. And I think they're going to look to get back to that this season. Devon Achane, he's a Heisman sleeper in my eyes. 910 of his 1,200 career yards came last year. 9 of his 13 touchdowns on the career as well. Phenomenal playmaker. 7 yards per carry last season. He's had that average for his first 2 years. Great speed. An elusive runner, too. You've seen that run in the Orange Bowl he had against North Carolina his freshman year. He was like a 65-plus yarder. He shook a defender or two, and I couldn't catch him. Devon Achane, I love what he brings to the table. He even had a kickoff return against Alabama last year. I love Devon Achane. I'd see him as a Heisman sleeper. Do you concur?
Yeah, so I think A-Chain will carry the load here for Texas A&M. I really like him as a player. And he also can catch the ball too. He had 24 receptions, good for 260 yards last season, and a receiving touchdown out of the backfield. I think he's going to be a very talented running back for this Texas A&M team. He's going to carry the bulk of the load, like you said. Had 910 yards last season on the ground. I expect Jimbo Fisher to run the ball a decent amount this year, especially with some of the potential backups as well that could be in this running back room we're going to talk about in a second. A-Chain is a clear favorite to lead this running back core, and like you said, Heisman sleeper definitely is a real possibility. I think he has a real opportunity here to kind of pick up where he left off last season, dominate on the ground, and maybe even get involved in the special teams. Like you said, he had that kickoff return for a touchdown against Alabama. Maybe we see him go back into the kickoff return game this year. I don't know if they will do that or not, but I think he's a very talented running back and can really kind of lead the ground game for this Texas A&M Aggies team, and I really like what I see out of him. Like you said, strong Orange Bowl. Very impressed by him in general. Very well-rounded back, and I think this is a great sort of leading back for this Texas A&M team.
L.J. Johnson is backup. He's going to assume a change role from recent years. Isaiah Spiller's gone, so Devon, he's going to assume the lead duties. I don't know how strong the 1-2 punch will be. I think Devon's certainly going to get a great bulk of the carries. L.J. Johnson, though, he fits terrific. He's a one-cut, explosive runner, downhill guy. Loves contact, 5'10", 205. I think he's going to make a pretty solid backup here. Amari Daniels, I think, well, him and Johnson, they're going to battle for the number 2 spot. I think Johnson's certainly going to get it. They're both redshirt freshmen, though. It's not the deepest of backfields, but I'd say they got enough potential to have a very respectable 1-2 punch to average about 200 yards per game this season.
Yeah, I think Johnson is the clear number 2 running back in this room. I like his size, like you said, and I think there's a real opportunity that he can get some good carries, maybe on third down, and kind of hold that backup role as A-Chain ascends to the number 1 back. I'm very interested to see how he plays this year and see how much usage he gets.
I really don't care who's the running back. I could be the running back. They're going to do damage behind this offensive line. This is pretty nasty. Bryce Foster at center. Uben Feathery, 6'8", 320 pounds. He's probably going to move the left tackle this year. They were both all SEC freshmen a season ago. The size, it's on the screen for the people watching. It's pretty ridiculous. I love what they bring to the table, all 5 starters. High upside. What's your first take on this offensive line?
So I like Feathery, like you said, coming off of strong freshman season. Like you said, you're going to throw him outside the left tackle. I think that's where he really fits. He's going to be very strong there. But I also like the backup they have at left tackle, junior Blake Trainer. I'm very interested to see if he gets any game time. I also like the center, like you said, Bryce Foster. Very strong freshman season, coming back for his sophomore season. It's only going to get better as he continues to play and get more reps. I really like how he's going to hold down the center position. In general, like you said, the 5 starters on this offensive line are really strong. I look at Layden Robinson as well, very strong junior. I think he has a lot of experience as well, and I think this offensive line is going to be very strong, and you can expect a lot of strong running game from Texas A&M this year, as they're going to have that offensive line protect them and really give them those nice holes and give opportunities for the running backs to break free and make some nice plays.
Layden Robinson, 6'4", 320, very powerful, like you said. Jimbo Fisher likes him. He also likes, Ike Ugambai. This guy is very athletic, nice explosion for his size, and athleticism for that size as well is pretty nice. I think Trey Zunn as well. He's probably going to be the starter at right tackle. He's exactly what they want, though. A guy who has a high motor, can drive guys back in the run game, I think, despite the youthfulness kind of on this offensive line. In terms of class, they're pretty youthful, but again, guys like Ruben and Bryce, they started last year, all year long. That's why I'm loving this unit potentially for 2023, because this offensive line, they're probably going to get all 5 starters back next year. Remember, they coming into the year, they replaced 4 of them. I'm pretty sure Kenyon Green was the only returner. Jameer Johnson, he was a veteran. Those 2 are gone on the left side. They don't have to replace much. The Layden Robinson, Ruben Feathery are the 2 replacements. So this line is gold. I think this is probably going to be one of the nation's best, even despite the kind of inexperience compared to some other teams across the FBS. Love this group all around.
I look at the right tackle as my only question mark, because, like you said, Zunn is probably the probable starter as a redshirt freshman, but I think there could be some competition there, and they might actually move Blake Trainer out there to the right side as well, or maybe PJ Williams, the freshman, coming in, a very high recruit. There's definitely a lot of questions on that, but like you said, this is such a strong offensive line, and even if they do have questions on the right tackle, the other 4 positions are just so strong that this offensive line is going to lead the way in FBS for sure.
Now, this wide receiver group, I'm kind of iffy about it. I don't know really how to feel. You can give me your take here in a second, but Anaya Smith coming back, that's a great pickup. He is a good athlete, change of directions, top-notch, nice route runner, 1,300 yards over the last 3 seasons. Not great production, but he's been very reliable for them the last 2 seasons. Chase Laney's another one of those guys who only played 7 games last year, 400-plus yards in 2020.
So I look at it, without Smith, this wide receiving core would be significantly weaker, and I'd be really concerned. But bringing Smith back as a senior, a lot of experience, I think that is a really strong sort of re-addition to the team. I am certainly concerned with the wide receiving core. We looked at some teams recently, especially Ohio State, Alabama, that have significantly better wide receiving cores, in my opinion. So that is a bit of a question mark, and we don't really know who's going to be throwing the ball yet, if it is going to be Johnson or not. I'm a little concerned with this. I think that's the one weak spot on this offense. We've had a lot to say, a lot of praise for the offense so far, but I do have questions about the wide receiver. And it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be that sort of impact player. I like Smith coming back. I think Smith will have a good year. He should get the ball a lot. But in general, I'm a little concerned. I guess we'll have to see how it looks through the first couple of games and then make an opinion on that for sure.
I mean, they've recruited the position very well. Chris Marshall, Evan Stewart, 2 incoming 5-star recruits. But when you're a true freshman in college football, I'm always iffy on you. That's the perfect perspective to have usually on incoming guys. How much will they play? What role will they play? How will they adjust? So I'm not going to expect them to jump into the rotation right away. Receiver, like you said, it's kind of iffy. Keith Brown might even get involved, but there's not a lot of production outside of Smith. Not a lot of experience really either. You look at tight end though. I love this group. They're going to be fine at tight end. Jake Johnson, he's also the top ranked tight end this year's class. Donovan Green, number 4 ranked in the class of 2022. So they're loaded at tight end. But again, the youthful inexperience at pass catcher might be this unit's biggest downfall.
Yeah, you look at it, Jimbo seems to be recruiting those tight ends very well. Jake Johnson, the brother of Max Johnson, very interesting dynamic there. I think this is a very solid tight end core, and I think they will be getting a lot of touches and potentially be involved in the game.
Overall, this offense, I think they have a pretty high ceiling. The pass catchers, though, might be the make or break for how high their ceiling truly is. Overall, though, I like this offense. I think it's setting up not just for 2022, like I alluded to earlier, 2023. I really like what they have from a potential standpoint in the future. This offense, though, will certainly compete in the SEC. We move to the defense. DJ Durkin comes over from Ole Miss. He's going to inherit this 4-2-5 left by Mike Elko, who went to Duke. The defensive line, they replace everybody, that wrecking crew. They lose 5 guys in that front 7, 4 of them on the defensive line. They've recruited this position better than anybody, but again, true freshmen, it's hard to assume what kind of roles or impact they'll have this year. Outside of Shamar Turner, I'm kind of a little iffy on this unit, at least early on in the season.
Yeah, I also agree with that as well. I look at this, they're a very youthful roster. The projected lineup I'm looking at here is multiple redshirt freshmen and some true freshmen starting. I think that's a very concerning thing to see. Like you said, that defensive line class is probably the best in college football history, and it was very talented in that regard. But these guys just don't have real experience outside of Turner. I look for Turner to be kind of the lead on this defensive line, slotting in a defensive tackle role. I look at Diggs as well. I think he has some experience as a sophomore. He might have some real opportunity here. But in general, this is a very weak defensive line. To be interesting to see what DJ Durkin can do with that. Durkin had a really good year at Ole Miss last year. That defense took a huge step forward in what was a massive question mark under Lane Kiffin. And now he comes over here to Texas A&M, kind of inherits this bit of a weak defensive line. It'll be interesting to see what he can do with that and kind of make these guys into a strong team, because that could be a huge question mark for this team.
Yeah, McKinley Jackson, 6'2", 325. He's out for the spring, so that's obviously not going to help anything. But Turner, though, former 5-star, I think he'll be an excellent inside pass rusher. He's one of 3 all-freshmen from last year. They're coming back on this defense, so they have a lot of talent. Khalil Diggs, though, like I said, he's up to 260 pounds. Let's see how he carries that weight. He's got a good first step, great raw athlete. We'll see, what Durkin and this coaching staff can do with him. He's a guy with plenty of upside, though. Overall, though, I'm not really sure where they're going to get this pass rush from. Also don't really know what they're going to get from a run-stopping standpoint, but long-term, they're going to be fine. They got 3 of the top 4 defensive line recruits, 4 of the top 10, and they might even get another one, Overton. He was supposed to be in next year's class. He reclassified. A&M is clearly in the hunt. At least I've heard he's in the hunt to go to the Aggies, so they're going to be fine in the long term. They're recruited very on an elite level at this position, but short term, I think it might be a little bumpy. Looking at who the 2 will be in this 4-2, I think they're going to be just fine at linebacker. Edgar Cooper, he was another one of those guys. He was all freshman last year. He's one of the top tacklers on this team, especially down the stretch. He's really good in coverage as well. I think this is a all-conference guy for at least a foreseeable future.
Cooper had a really strong second half of the season. He was really all freshman last year, very strong 2021 down the stretch. I look at Chris Russell, the senior, being the other linebacker. I have a lot of question marks with him. He has some experience, but I don't really know how strong he's going to be with this team. So I think Cooper's going to lead the line here. Very strong linebacker. Look to see a lot of plays out of him. I'm really impressed by him. Great end of the year. Really turned it around after some question marks at the start of the season. We should expect to see him take a step forward and establish that on that all freshman season last year. In general, I think the linebacking core will be very solid for this Texas A&M Aggies team.
Yeah, because, Andre White, him and Cooper, I think they're kind of penciled in as the starters right here in the middle of this defense. Hard hitter, very impressive as a run stopper. High ceiling for both of them. The coaching staff really likes what they have here at linebacker. So I think they're going to be pretty straight at this position. I think these guys are going to have to play larger roles, though, early on in the year due to this defensive line's inexperience. We'll see what happens, though. I'm very interested to see what kind of packages they roll out with these two linebackers. These guys are pretty versatile, I'd say. So overall, the ceiling for this front seven, very good. The defensive line, though, still a question mark. I'm not too worried about, though, because the same thing, Georgia's going through the same thing pretty much, so I'm not too worried about it. These guys will figure it out. The secondary, though, these guys, I think they're set to have a really big year. They got plenty of experience. They also got a good repertoire of playmaking, I think. They're going to, have 5 DBs back there. I'm not really sure who they're going to put at the slot, but Antonio Johnson is very good at that position. He was also a really good safety, so we'll see what he does here in this upcoming season. He was a very good run stopper. He's one of the top tacklers, as was Damani Richardson. He's coming back. I think he's a super senior at this point. He's a big-time leader in the secondary. I expect big things from this safety group.
Yeah, I like Richardson coming back, like you said, as a super senior, brings a ton of experience to this. And like you said, Antonio Johnson makes a lot of good plays, really strong in the tackling department. I like them a lot. That pairing at safety can be really strong for this five-back secondary. I'm really impressed by having those two guys come back, especially Richardson. That inexperience on the field as a super senior is just invaluable. Very talented player, and I'm very interested to see what he can do in this final season, most likely, at Texas A&M.
Yeah, because Leon O'Neal was one of their starting safeties last year. I'm pretty sure Johnson played most of his time at the slot. I could be wrong, but I believe that's where he spent most of his 2021 season. But yeah, he'll play that safety role, I think, to a T this year. I'm not too upset what they have at corner either. Tyreek Chappell, another one of those guys that was all freshman last year, 9 pass breakups. He had a pick. He had some struggles in the big games. I think it was against Alabama where he had his biggest issues. But guess what? Who didn't? He's a freshman. I thought he held up pretty well in those games against tougher opponents. And then Jalen Johnson at corner, I thought he was a pretty solid playmaker as well. These guys gained some pretty wealthy experience last year. They're going to continue to do so this year. Their DB coach as well. He's also one of the top in the country, I think. So I think this secondary overall, I really like what they bring to the table. What are your thoughts on this cornerback duo?
So I like Chappell a lot. Like you said, all freshman last year. He struggled a little bit against Alabama, but it's tough to play against Alabama as a freshman in that sort of very strong limelight moment. I was very impressed with him, especially down the stretch. I think he's going to be kind of the standout here as a sophomore. I'm very impressed to see what he can do. I like his play style. Very good with the flat pass breakups, like you said, almost double-digit pass breakups and an interception to boot. I'm very impressed by Chappell. I think he's going to take a huge step forward. We can see a very strong year out of him at cornerback.
Earlier in the season, I'm really interested to see how this nickel defense, when they roll it out, does against stopping the run, because I feel like they might need some extra help early in the year with this defensive line. Keep harping on the fact I'm a little worried. Of course, I'm not too worried at the same time, but you never know what's going to happen early in the season with youth and experience. A&M, they were 17th in pass defense last year. Those numbers are kind of skewed, though, when you look at their game log, quality of opponent, because, Alabama, Mississippi State, LSU, they had no issues throwing it against these guys. So there's obviously plenty of work to do. I like what they have in place, though. I think the future is bright for this entire defense.
I agree. I think Eric Young is also an interesting wild card as well. We didn't touch on him, the senior coming back. He could have a real potential strong year as well.
They also recruited this part of the ball very well. So 2023, I'm really eyeing them to be a national title contender, but I don't see why they can't compete for the West this fall. That leads us to our schedule preview and prediction here for the Aggies. They got App State and Miami in weeks 2 and 3, and then Arkansas is following. So it's not an easy stretch to start the season, but I think overall this is a very solid and tough schedule. They have Alabama week 8. They have to travel to Bryant-Denny. That's going to be a revenge game for Alabama. I see them losing that. And then out South Carolina, October 22nd. That's going to be a tough game. I'm not very confident in that now that I'm reminded it's after a bye week, but I think South Carolina, they're going to be rowdy. Spencer Rattler, I think he's going to have a great year. That's a very talented defense, very stiff defensive line. If that's a night game there in Williams-Brice Stadium, I think SC, they will be popping and they'll be ready for that game. I see them beating the Aggies that night. 10-2, 11-1, that seems to be my verdict here for the Aggies. Not the easiest of schedules. They got plenty of tough opponents, especially from September 17th all the way down to November 12th. It's very tough opponents, but I think the Aggies will handle it well. I think they're really good on offense, at least with their offensive line and their running game. We'll see what happens with the passing game because depth is a concern at wide receiver, but I like Max Johnson or Haynes King. Whoever's the starter, I think it'll be Max, but I think they're comfortable with what they got at quarterback. It's an upgrade over Calzada from last year. In the secondary, I think they're going to make some big strides, like what they got in Chappell, Richardson coming back, Antonio Johnson, he's one of the nation's best at his position. They're also stacked in the trenches as well, so I like this defense, I like the offense, I like what this team can accomplish this year. They're legit contenders for the West, but I think Alabama will get the nod over them there on October 8th, and was going to be an interesting game for the Aggies. That's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.